Cowbells. That's the first sign. Metallic, frantic, bouncing off stone like footsteps of a stranger. Then the laughter hits. A horned red face snaps into the torchlight, ribbons flaring, bells screaming at its hips, and the carito lunges, grabbing you in a mischievous embrace.
What you are about to hear is believed to be real, based on witness accounts, testimonies, and public record. This is terrifying and true.
Tonight, we travel to northern Portugal, the land of many of my ancestors, into a village of stone lanes and cold night air, where an ancient festival still unleashes something that looks, sounds, and moves like a demon. They call them the Caretos, masked figures in shredded color, armed with cowbells, anonymity, and a tradition that appears older than the country itself. Some say it's pagan theater, an echo of pre-Roman rites. Others insist it's simply the community, granting chaos a brief, sanctioned reign before the solemnity of Lent. But if those bells are closing in, you hear them all around you, you may not have time to decide what exactly you believe. So make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app. As we head to Iberia, we have a date with a dark destiny as we discover these fascinating and terrifying traditions. Night falls on the remote village of Podence in northern Portugal. The only warning is the clatter of cowbells echoing off stone walls. A young woman presses herself into a doorway, heart pounding, as laughter and wild shrieks grow nearer. Suddenly, a figure bursts from the shadows, a man-shaped thing draped in ragged ribbons of red, yellow, and green. A demonic face glares from behind a horned mask. With a whoop, the creature lunges. Cowbells jangle furiously at his waist as he throws a woolly arm around the girl in what would be called a mischievous embrace. He bats playfully at her hair with the tasseled tip of his long hood and bumps his bell-studded hips against hers in a manic dance. She squeals in mock horror, while her family roars with laughter. In a flash, the masked demon releases her and bounds away down the alley, bells clanging and cape flying, off to startle his next victim. This is not a nightmare, but a celebration. Welcome to Entrudo, where the Caretos, the wild carnival demons of Trasos Montes, run riot. The Caretos tradition is among the oldest in Portugal, believed to date back centuries, perhaps even millennia. Many historians trace these masked revelers to pre-Roman Celtic rituals that survived in the remote hills of the Iberian Peninsula. The very word intrudo, today synonymous with carnival, originally meant an entry in pagan times, referring to the entry into the warm season after winter's darkness. Long before it became tied to Lent, Entrudo marked the end of winter and the arrival of spring, a time to drive away evil spirits and invite fertility and renewal. In these ancient festivals, young men would don fearsome disguises, wild costumes, and frightful masks to represent otherworldly beings. By becoming these devils, they could scare off the literal and figurative gloom of winter. Some anthropologists believe the Caretos began as a rite of passage, a way for adolescent boys to prove themselves through boisterous, rule-breaking behavior. Scholars also link the Caretos to agrarian cults of fertility and ancestor worship, where the masked youths, as proxies for ancient gods or spirits, ensured bountiful crops, healthy livestock, and the continuity of the community. By donning the mask, an ordinary villager could bridge the worlds of the living and the dead, channeling primal chaos for the good of the tribe. The Catholic Church later folded this unruly celebration into the pre-Lent carnival season. But beneath the veneer of Christianity, the pagan DNA of Entrudo remains unmistakable. The hallmark of a Careto is his vividly colorful costume and devilish mask, a look at once comical and frightening. Traditionally, the costume is handmade from old quilts or thick woolen blankets, cut into fringed strips of red, green, yellow, black, and other bright hues. These long fringes cover the Careto from head to toe, giving him a ragged, shaggy silhouette that flutters as he moves. Over this, he straps on leather harnesses hung with clanging cowbells and rattles, often weighing many pounds. Every step or hip thrust produces a wild jangle, the unmistakable soundtrack of Entrudo. In fact, the Careto Carnival is often nicknamed Entrudo Cocarero, literally, Carnival of the Rattles and Bells, for the deafening noise of those bells. And then there is the mask. Usually made of sheet metal, leather, or wood, each mask is painted in lurid colors, blood red being the favorite, with exaggerated features like a long hooked nose, bulging lips or teeth, and occasionally horns. The effect is a caricature of a devil or mischievous spirit. In the village of Podence, Careto masks are often bright red with a menacing grin. In Lazarim, by contrast, the masks are hand-carved from alder wood and topped with horns for an even more demonic look. Whatever the material, the mask conceals the reveler's identity completely. 2 eye holes and perhaps a mouth slit are the only human features in an otherwise monstrous visage. In the flickering torchlight of a Podence alley, such a horned apparition truly looks like a nightmare come to life. Disguised in this way, the Careto is effectively no one and everyone, free to unleash mischief without personal consequence. The anonymity of the mask is the key to the tradition. It grants a license to transgress. As one cultural historian put it, when the Careto masks up, quote, "The world of gods and the dead is temporarily established among men, and normal rules no longer apply. The young men, and nowadays women as well, behind the masks, adopt high-pitched voices, beastly grunts or other distorted sounds, never speaking in their normal tones, further shrouding themselves in mystery. They transform fully into Caretos, carnival demons, for the few days of Entrudo. Night in Podence brings an uneasy thrill. Somewhere out in the darkness, the Caretos are on the move, their cowbells faintly jangling in the distance. When the festivities begin, the quiet villages of Trasos Montes erupt into chaos and laughter. Traditionally, the revelry kicks off in the days leading up to Lent, from Fat Sunday through Shrove Tuesday, with Caretos pouring in from the surrounding countryside. They come from every part of the village to join in groups, one account describes, running and shouting excitedly, scaring the people and assaulting all the wine cellars. Indeed, a time-honored Carito pastime is to barge into local taverns and cellars, rob them of wine or food, and gulp down hearty quantities of the region's wine. It's all done in good humor. Villagers often play along by offering the masked mob alcohol and watching the fun. One local tale recounts how a mob of Caretos once invaded a tavern, seized a full wine cask, and passed it around like a giant cup, gulping the contents amid gales of laughter. The Caretos' main targets, however, are not the wine jugs, but the villagers themselves, especially young women, an old carnival courting play that modern eyes might find a bit unsettling. During Entrudo, gangs of Caretos charge through the streets on a mission of semi-serious mischief, frightening bystanders, chasing women, and generally causing mayhem. They leap out from unexpected corners, let out ear-piercing whoops, and rattle their belts ferociously at anyone in their path. If you're caught, prepare to be playfully harassed. A favorite trick is to rattle or shake the girls, essentially to jingle the belt of cowbells against a woman's hips in a symbolic, if not suggestive, dance. In the past, Caretos carried dried pig bladders or inflated cow bladders as weapons, whacking onlookers with these smelly balloons for a laugh. Others swung whips made of animal hide or sticks, striking the ground or the legs of laggards to herd people along. It's said that no one is supposed to walk the streets uncostumed during Entrudo, and the Caretos enforce that rule by terrorizing anyone not in a disguise until they join the fun or seek refuge indoors. For the young women of the village, carnival mischief traditionally had a rough edge. Older generations still recall how, decades ago, quote, the village girls used to hide inside their homes to avoid the unruly Caretos' attention. And little wonder, in those days the masked youths took pride in truly outrageous pranks. They would whip people with the mentioned bladders, shower crowds with ashes, and even animal manure. And if a girl was too slow to flee, she might get grabbed and unceremoniously smeared with soot. Caretos thought nothing of bursting into houses, bashing down doors, to overturn dinner pots, blow out lamps, or drag people outside into the cold of night. In one notorious stunt, particularly bold Caretos reportedly dumped unsuspecting victims into a bath of ants, upending an ant-infested log or anthill onto a person. Such antics made the Caretos genuinely feared by children and respected, if begrudgingly, by adults. These were nights when the devils ran free, and all decent folk could do was either join in the madness or stay behind locked doors until the storm passed. In modern times, the Caretos have toned down the brutality, but only a little. Today's pranks are described as relatively mild and playful compared to the past. The wild chases continue, but the weapons of choice are now more symbolic. The bells and hoods of the costume itself. Caretos will bash people with their long hoods, rock parked cars back and forth, pilfer hats, and, of course, still grab and bump into attractive young women amid fits of giggles. Antics carried on with a wink, even if they might raise a few eyebrows today. It is not uncommon for a Careto to clamber up a balcony or scale a low roof if a group of girls has wisely sought higher ground. The sight of a dozen fringe-suited devils swarming up a wall as their would-be victims shriek with laughter is the essence of Entrudo mischief. No one is truly safe from their shenanigans. Aside from the quick and the cleverly costumed, about the only people the Caretos leave alone are the matrofonas, men dressed in drag as gaudy old women who are considered off-limits in the spirit of carnival parody. These matrofonas, with their garish dresses and headscarves, will later enact mock weddings with the Caretos as part of the festivities, further blurring gender and social norms. Despite all of the mayhem, the atmosphere is overwhelmingly festive and good-humored. All over town, bells clang and people howl with laughter, as everyone, young and old, is either part of a prank or the target of one. The entire community understands that this temporary chaos is the point of Entrudo, a cathartic release of societal pressure. For a few days, the usual hierarchies vanish. The youth have the run of the village, authority is mocked, and even the shy can become flamboyant tricksters behind a mask. As one participant wryly noted after being jostled by some Caretos, today the pranks may leave you, quote, a little bruised, but they're all in good fun. Come Ash Wednesday, the costumes will be hung up, the soot washed off, and the normalcy will return. But until then, through the long winter nights of Entrudo, the carnival demons reign supreme. The Careto celebrations typically build to a raucous climax on Shrove Tuesday, also known as Mardi Gras. By that point, the masked revelers have been causing havoc since the preceding Sunday, and the entire village is swept up in the carnival spirit. In Podence and many other towns, Carnival Monday is actually the wildest day of all, so packed with events that locals simply call it the fun second fiera. Medieval-style marching bands roam the streets, drummers and bagpipers add to the din of bells, and satirical skits or plays are performed in the village square. One long-standing tradition on Carnival Monday night in Podence is for a group of men to publicly read a list of fictitious engagements, pairing off local boys and girls in jokey betrothals to elicit groans and laughter from the crowd. It's a night of relentless mockery and mirth. As darkness falls on Shrove Tuesday, Entrudo often ends in literal flames. In keeping with carnival customs worldwide, Tras os Montes villages will torch a figure called the Entrudo, a Shrovetide carnival effigy that represents the excesses of the season. Sometimes the effigy is a straw-stuffed dummy, symbolizing the sins of the past year. Other times there are two figures, a male and female carnival, that are set ablaze as a purification rite. In Podence, an impressive torchlit procession winds through the darkened streets, with Caretos leading townsfolk by flaming torches to the site of the bonfire. There, to triumphant shouts, the giant effigy is ignited. Sparks fly up into the cold sky as the demon-masked Caretos dance around the flames, ringing their bells in frenzied farewell to Entrudo. By the time the last ember dies, the reign of the Caretos is over, at least until next winter. For all of its chaos, Entrudo has always been about driving away winter's darkness and ushering in the spring. Even the Caretos' playful harassment of young women echoed ancient fertility rites, a covert courtship ritual promising new unions and future births beneath the guise of mischief. Underneath the revelry lies an age-old hope: scare off the evil spirits and cold of winter, ensure that warmth and fertility return, and the cycle of life can begin anew. By the mid-20th century, the Caretos of Trás-os-Montes had terrified and delighted countless generations, but the pressures of the modern world nearly snuffed them out. The 1960s and 70s were hard times in rural Portugal. Economic hardship and the authoritarian Salazar regime drove many young people to emigrate, leaving villages depopulated. Winters in Podence grew eerily quiet. The clamor of bells and whoops vanished as Entrudo all but faded away. With so few youths left to don the costumes and a dictatorship that frowned on unruly festivals, the annual masquerades waned. Some villages simply stopped holding Entrudo altogether during those dark and cold years. Yet, like spring itself, Entrudo refused to vanish forever. With the return of democracy and a renewed pride in folk culture, the 1980s saw a determined revival of the Caretos. In Podence, locals formed a Caretos association to ensure the tradition did not disappear. They also started the next generation early. Children, affectionately nicknamed Facanitus, or little knife blades, began dressing up as miniature Caretos and learning the tricks of the trade. It's not unusual now to see toddlers trotting along in tiny fringed suits, complete with pint-sized cowbells, eagerly mimicking their older brothers. This passing of the torch guarantees that each new generation grows up with Entrudo in their blood. Each year, the sight of little Caretos trotting alongside their elders in the Entrudo parade is a joyful reminder that the tradition's future is in good hands. Another major change in recent decades is that women have joined the ranks of the Caretos. What began as an all-male rite of passage has evolved with the times. Today, girls and women are welcome to don the fringed suit and mask alongside the boys. This not only doubles the number of potential revelers, but adds a new dynamic, perhaps even more incentive for the men to bring their A-game when they know some of the devils chasing them might actually be the young women they wish to pursue. Efforts to preserve this unique heritage got a major boost in 2019 when the United Nations Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, inscribed Podence's winter festival, Entrudo Coqueiro, on its representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The UNESCO citation praised the practice as a living link to ancient seasonal rites and a pillar of community identity. Today, far from fading, the Caretos are thriving. The tiny village of Podence has become world famous each carnival season, drawing thousands of visitors eager to witness and perhaps survive the Careto onslaught. What was once an insider's festivity is now a major tourist attraction, though still very much run by locals for locals, with outsiders as welcome spectators, and of course, sometimes, prey. Podence even opened a dedicated Casa do Careto museum in 2017 to showcase costumes and educate visitors on Entrudo's history. In Lazarim, for example, carnival revelers still carve demon-faced wooden masks and read satirical wills before burning a gigantic effigy of Carnival at the festival's close. And in the villages of Vinhais, the local Caretos have been revived to showcase community pride and attract new generations of merrymakers. If you attend, expect a raucous, immersive affair rather than a sanitized parade. As travel writer Julie Dawn Fox observed about Podence, quote, "There are no carnival floats or samba squads here, just 40 men dressed in stripes of red, yellow, and green wool, sporting leather belts with cowbells. The Caretos spend 3 days before Lent running wild in the streets, playing tricks on the unsuspecting. Make no mistake, this is Carnival at its most raw and authentic. Worlds away from the glitzy parade floats of Lisbon or Rio. In other words, prepare to be grabbed, rattled, and perhaps splashed with wine. But you'll come away with unforgettable memories of a tradition that is equal parts spooky and spectacular. While the Caretos of Podence are legendary, they are not alone. Just across the border in nearby Spain and in other corners of Iberia, similar masked troublemakers come out each year during Carnival. In Galicia, for example, the Peliqueros of Laza race through the streets cracking whips and clanging cowbells. Nearby towns boast their own horned mischief makers with names like cigarrones and pantallas, demanding wine tolls or startling anyone not in a costume. Even elsewhere in Portugal, villages such as Lazarim keep alive kindred traditions, carving diabolic masks and ending the festivities with bonfires. Different names, different costumes, but the same wild spirit of Entrudo thrives beyond Podence. Nor is the mayhem limited to Carnival itself. In some places, the masquerades emerge around Christmas time and New Year's, a throwback to even older solstice rites. On New Year's Day in Spain's Zamora province, soot-smeared devils, called Los Corochos, rampage through the streets accompanied by characters staging a comic battle between good and evil. Meanwhile, in the Basque highlands, fur-clad bell-bearers known as Joldunak march from village to village swinging enormous cowbells in solemn procession to drive off evil spirits, and one of the most striking offshoots is Portugal's Chocalairu de Bemposta, a horned bell ringer who begs meekly on December 26, then turns ferocious on January 1st, chasing everyone in sight. According to local lore, this devil was punished by God for trying to tempt the Virgin Mary, condemned to alternate one day of peace with one day of fury. It's a vivid mix of Christian legend and pagan revelry, and further proof that Entrudo's anarchic spirit extends far beyond one village or season. In the end, the Caretos of Entrudo embody the double-edged nature of Carnival itself. Terrifying because in the flicker of torchlight, these masked horned figures really do look like something out of your oldest nightmares, feral demons springing from the dark to grab us, and yet true, because they represent real traditions and real human needs. The need to laugh at fear, to rebel playfully against the rules, and to bind a community together by facing the monsters as one. The Caretos may have the faces of devils, but their antics carry the promise of spring and renewal under all the bluster. Once a year, in Tras os Montes, an ordinary young man becomes a prowling fiend for a night, and a quiet farming village becomes a cauldron of sacred mischief. The fact that this still happens today in our age of technology and tame entertainment is a testament to the power of tradition. Clearly, there is something in us that still thrills to the clamor of cowbells in the dark, to the wild promise that chaos can cleanse and renew the world. Imagine standing in Podence on a chilly carnival evening, the smell of wood smoke and fried dough in the air, when from somewhere down a dark lane you hear the first jingle of a cowbell. A surge of excitement and a jolt of primordial fear ripples through the crowd. They're coming. Moments later, a chorus of whoops and cackles erupt, and the Caretos are upon you. Leaping, ringing, red tassels flying, demon masks gleaming in the lamplight. You yelp and jump aside as a grinning devil barrels past, and find yourself laughing. Filled with exhilaration, you have been part of Entrudo's magic, chased by a devil, and lived to tell the tale. And as the villagers of Podence and countless communities before them would assure you, there's no better way to welcome the spring. Terrifying and True is narrated by Enrique Couto. It's executive produced by Rob Fields and Bobbletopia.com, and produced by Dan Wilder, with original theme music by Ray Mattis. If you have a story you think we should cover on Terrifying and True, send us an email at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. And if you want to support us for as little as $1 a month, go to weeklyspooky.com/join. Your support for as little as $1 a month keeps the show going. And speaking of, I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay a little bit more to hear their name at the end of the show. And they are Johnny Nix, Kate and Lulu, Jessica Fuller, Mike Eschewey, Jenny Green, Amber Hansford, Karen Wiemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much, and thank you for listening. We'll see you all right here next time on Terrifying and True.